Hi everyone, we're Gabby,
Karim,
and Jules.
and you're listening to the Making of an Incredible MD podcast by Allied to Health.
Last season we took you behind the scenes of some of our mock MMI stations.
So we've talked about the GAMSAT and we've talked about the interviews. So now on to the next step. This season we're talking all things getting ready for med school.
We will be running you through what a day in the life of a medical student looks like, what study techniques to know about, what your career is going to look like, and much more.
So stay tuned and get ready to get med ready.
Hey everyone, it's Gabby here, and on this episode of the podcast, I sit down one-on-one with the beautiful Chimmy. She is a very busy lady. She has a part-time job, volunteers, and runs her own business, all while studying a double degree of commerce and biomed at Monash. Chimmy has struggled with the decision of whether or not to pursue medicine for quite some time now. So we thought, who better to talk to and discuss how to know whether or not medicine is for you. I hope you enjoy this episode of the podcast. Hi, Chimaka. Thanks for joining me today. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Gabby?
Good, thank you. Before we get started, we'll just start with an acknowledgement of country. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we're recording this podcast today. That's the Wurundjeri lands of the Kulin Nations. I would like to pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and also pay my respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander listeners today. Okay, so did you want to start us off with just telling us a little bit about yourself?
I will say hi to everyone. Hi, everyone who's listening. Well, I'm Chimaka, as Gabby said, and most people call me Chimmy. I'm 20 years old, and I'm in my third year at Monash Biomed and Commerce. I'm doing Biomed and Commerce. I am also in the Biomedical Society at the moment, and the Monash African Society, which keeps me pretty busy, and it's a lot of fun. On the side, I do netball, and I work as a disability support worker. And yeah, so it's about me.
Very busy. My gosh, how do you have time for that?
I don't know. I do. You should see my calendar. It's crazy.
Crazy. I do love a good calendar though.
Same.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you chose to do a double degree of biomed and commerce, because that's a big one.
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting combo. Everyone always, when I tell people, they're always like, that's so random. But first of all, coming out of high school, I initially wanted to get into med, straight away. So undergrad med, but I obviously didn't get the ATAR for it. Was a little disappointed, but at first, my parents really wanted me to do pharmacy or optometry, and I did put those options down, but during the holidays between when uni was about to start and when school ended, like the little time between then, I would wake up in like sweats. I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't think this is for me. So I told my parents, I was like, I can't do it. So they're like, fine, then pick what you want. And the closest thing to what I saw myself doing was like med, and as a backup, maybe corporate. So I thought biomedical science and commerce. So it's just in case, just in cases. So that's a 4-year degree, and so far I'm loving it. It's hard, obviously, because it's a whole different universe, and I never did any social sciences in high school, so it's quite new to me. But I still think it's really good. And I also own a business, so the commerce side also helps me run my business, so, marketing and whatnot, and graphic stuff. And yeah. So I decided to do commerce and biomed. I initially put biomed by itself first, and then biomed commerce after that. But I think biomed had been, like it had been full, so they put me in commerce and biomed, which I do not regret at all. It's been good.
Yeah. Wow. You really get the best of both worlds doing both of those things. Definitely learning some practical skills and real life skills in commerce, teamed with the traditional biomed knowledge.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy mix, but a good one.
Yeah. And so what inspired you in the beginning to sort of pursue that medical pathway?
Well, from a young age, I've always been a carer. Like I always wanted to care for people. I was always interested in just, I don't know how to explain it. I was just always wanting to fix things, trying to care for people. I don't know how to explain it, but I just felt it, something that I wanted to do. Definitely had an influence of my parents there. So that was something that, drove the interest. It could have been midwifery, it could have been anything. Like at the moment, as I said, I'm a carer, so like that's just what I do. But they drove the doctor, because they're very traditional African parents. But yeah, so that was definitely very integral in my choice. But yeah, as I've grown up and as I've realized a bit more about myself, I realized that maybe med is not the way, but dentistry instead.
Right. Okay. And can you tell us a little bit more about how you figure out whether or not med is the pathway for you? Because you're sort of in that stage of biomed where so many students are really trying to figure out, okay, what's next? What's next after graduation? Do I apply for med? Do I sit the GAMSAT? So how did you sort of figure it out, or how are you figuring it out, whether or not med is for you?
Well, I was telling Gabby before, and I'll say the story again. So basically, I have an older sister, and she did a degree of Bachelor of Science at Monash. And after finishing her honors, she actually was trying to do GAMSAT. I don't want to out her, but I'm going to out her. I'm sorry to my sister. She did the GAMSAT quite a few times and didn't really get the scores that she wanted. And after the last time she did it, which was May last year, 2020, and didn't get the score she wanted, I kind of had to learn from her mistake and kind of think, well, am I willing to sacrifice my social life, my time, or like my work in order to get into med? Do I love it enough to make these sacrifices, and like to put in the hard work to get the scores of the GAMSAT, or do I not love it enough? Is the idea coming from somewhere else? And I kind of had to think and separate the idea from what my parents wanted for me and what I wanted for me. And I knew that I wanted to care, and I knew that I wanted to do something where I was, interacting with clients or interacting with patients. But I also knew that I didn't want I've heard about the weight of being a medical student, and the time and the energy and all the tough things you go through as a medical student. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. And I talked to a family friend who's a dentist and a family friend who's a doctor, and they both kind of set out, what the lifestyle is like for a doctor and a lifestyle for a dentist. And if people want to know, basically the doctor he sees his kids maybe once a week. He owns 3 practices, and he works very hard, obviously, but it's also a really tough lifestyle, and you don't really, get to live your life really. Whereas the dentist, she owns 3 practices as well, and 2 practices, sorry. She owns 2 practices and goes on holidays with her kids all the time, gets to spend lots of time with her husband, has days off, and the lifestyle was much more of what I wanted, because I'm a very, I'm a family kind of girl, family oriented. So yeah, I knew that was a huge part of what helped me decide whether or not I wanted to do med.
Yeah, exactly. It's really great that you have sort of people as well in both fields that you can sort of look at and be like, okay, what's their life like, and even talk to them a little bit about their life and their journeys, which I think is really useful. But yeah, you've got to look at it as a big picture, but also, for any biomed people listening, med isn't your only option. I know it sort of seems like it is when you're in that med tunnel, I say, because everyone around you is either trying to get into med or, absolutely against med. There doesn't seem to be that middle ground too much. So it's really great to hear from you and really listen to how you've debated it in your head, either way. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about the dentistry pathway, if you know anything about it and how you're going to approach that.
Yeah, so the dentistry pathway in Australia is quite similar to the med pathway. So you do have to complete the GAMSAT and get a certain score in order to get offered a interview. Some places do interview, some places don't. I'm not sure exactly which ones do. But yeah, it's very similar. You do have to do the GAMSAT, then you go and you do the interview, and then you get offered a place. So yeah, it's a 4 to 5 year, depending on the university, I believe, I know that Monash, for instance, doesn't have a dental what's called cohort. Obviously, they don't do dentistry at all. So the ones that I know of in Melbourne at the moment are the University of Melbourne and La Trobe, but La Trobe is located out in Bendigo. And there's the University of South Australia or Adelaide, and Flinders that also do dentistry. So there's quite a few of them who do dentistry. This is also, I'm talking about postgrad dentistry. So yeah, you do have to complete your undergrad course, whether it be a biomed, and there are requirements in terms of units that you have to complete. But if you're a biomed student, you're pretty much fine because it's biomed. So yeah, there's that. There's more, the way that I learned more about dentistry and what's actually required in the courses and what they do. I actually started watching, I went and did a Google about, I did a lot of Googles about dentistry versus med. And then I stumbled across this YouTuber whose name, I think her name is Jessie Smiles. I believe her name is Jessie Smiles, but if it's not, I'll try and make sure I get that corrected. And she's a dental student. I think she's in her 4th year of dental school. But she lives in Canada, I believe. But it's very similar. And she basically just vlogs her life, and I kind of just fell in love. She would just talk about her schedule. She'd carry the camera and go along her day, and like all the things that she had to do as a dental student. And yeah, I thought it was really, really cool. Like the clinical work was really cool. There was like, because I'm a creative person as well, there's a creative aspect to it as well that I kind of liked, the fact that you have to be very hands-on. You do have your hands in order to mold and all this other stuff, and I thought that was so cool. So yeah.
Yeah, it is a very full-on course and a very hands-on course. I think lots of people don't realize how hands-on and practical it is from day dot. We actually had a dentistry student on our podcast right at the beginning of the podcast, very early days. For any listeners that want a little bit more as well, that's something to check out. But we'll try to put that Jessie Smiles link in our show notes as well. And it's still quite a competitive course to get in as well. So do you have any advice for listeners who are trying to get into med or dentistry and trying to figure that out, and any advice to them at all?
Well, one thing that I know that is required is that you do have to understand the kind of course you're getting yourself into, and understand, as I said, the sacrifices you need to make. If you're a very, very social person, like I am at the moment, you need to know when and where you need to like give yourself time for study, give yourself time for rest, give yourself time for just you time. And in order to have effective study and have like a good, like a functioning brain, we don't want breakdowns. And just, I honestly would say, don't think about doing the GAMSAT until you're ready to study, because what's a lot of people do, I like see a lot of students are always like, oh my gosh, like I want to do the GAMSAT, like I want to do the GAMSAT, like they don't even have to do it quite yet, or they're doing it early too so they can get as many goes in before, which is cool. But I still think that if you give yourself, like if you say, okay, I'm gonna do this in my 3rd year, on the second half of my 3rd year, give yourself enough time to study, really put your mind to it so that you don't have to keep doing it and keep wasting the money, or just keep, spending the money. But if you need to do it again, you do it again, obviously. That was something that I would say, because also psyching yourself out is a huge thing, I think. When you're thinking about it too much, or you're overthinking, because GAMSAT's obviously, it's a big test, but it's not something that anyone can't do. Like, and you can do it, people can do it. So as long as you like believe in yourself and you continue to give it a good go, and you know that you're studying, you're putting your work in, you're giving it your best, then you'll be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice, and it is true. So many students just do the GAMSAT because everyone around them is doing it, or because they sort of feel pressured to do it, or they just want to have a look and see what it's like. But it's a lot of money to do that. And yeah, as you said, it is that if you get a poor score, or not a score that's quite good enough, it can really sort of play on your emotions. So that's great advice. I think really assess what you want first, And once you're ready, then jump in and give it a crack, and give it a good crack the first time around. So hopefully you only have to do it once.
Exactly.
But I think that's really great advice, and thanks for shedding light on different things and for sharing your story a little bit. I think this episode comes just in time as we, Karim, Jules and I, discuss a little bit about is med for you. So this is a great another perspective on the topic that I think students will find useful. And if students have any further questions or want to reach out, how can they reach out to you?
So you can reach out to me on my Instagram or by email. So my Instagram is just chimmy.adams, CHIMMY.adams, ADAMS, or my Gmail, which is chiamaka.adams@gmail.com. So
perfect. Thank you. And I'll put all of those details in the show notes as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Thank you for your time and for joining me.
No worries. See you later.
Bye. Hey everyone, just letting you all know that our GAMSAT mock exams are back. They are the most affordable mock exam packages in Australia, and they're very well reviewed by our students. So if you want some extra GAMSAT practice resources, check out the link in the show notes to find out more. Thank you for listening to the Making of an Incredible MD podcast by Allied to Health. Please like, share and subscribe to help spread the word about our podcast. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So send us an email or message on Facebook. All of our links are in the show notes. Thanks. We'll see you next time.